"You're not family, you're black," the lawyer said, eyes flat as chalk on a school board, while my stepmother smoothed her silk scarf and smiled at the room like victory had always lived in her mouth. Chairs squeaked, forks paused. I felt the whole fellowship hall tilt, like the earth just leaned in to see if I'd fold. I didn't fold. My name is Marcus King. I'm 27 years old, and I need to tell you what my stepmother did to me and what I did back. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. By the end of this story, you'll understand why I had to stand up in that church and make every lie come to light, even when the folks doing the lying had money, microphones, and skin that got believed on sight. The thing about truth is, it's like water. It always finds the cracks. But the first time I felt it seeping into the lies wrapped around my life, I was standing in that same church hall after service months earlier, paper plate heavy with collard greens and baked chicken, listening to Linda, my father's widow, my white stepmother, tell Deacon Sam and half the congregation how she and the estate had been supporting Marcus 5, sometimes 6,000 a month, because that's what family does, and everybody nodded, those Sunday smiles wide. She wore a Louis Vuitton scarf and a bracelet that caught the fluorescent light just right. Folks clapped at her generosity. I swallowed cornbread that turned to dust in my mouth. They lied. But that wasn't even the worst part. Back then, I was living in a studio off Old National Highway, paint peeling like it wanted to escape the walls, a space heater humming war with the Georgia cold because I couldn't pay both the heat and my insulin copay in January. Night shift janitor at the hospital in Midtown, mopping floors till my knee throbbed, stacking warehouse shifts when the hours got cut. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned shift by shift, and I was earning every bit of mine. I'd come home mornings to a fridge that hummed louder than it cooled, open it to half a bottle of insulin, 2 eggs, and a jar of pickles. I kept duct tape around the front of my work boots, the tape gray against black where the sole split like a lie under pressure. I counted coins for my MARTA fare, quarters and dimes, clacking on the counter while a bus pulled off outside my window, like it had all the time in the world but me. Sometimes I'd stand in the Dollar Tree, hunting the can with the best calories per 99 cents, and my stepsister would float past in a white Mercedes with a paper plate from church and a laugh big as the sky. I stood there counting out quarters and dimes while she parked her new Benz, bought with money they claimed they were sending to help me pay for my heart medication. That's what Linda told people. And it felt like somebody had taken my dignity and put it on layaway. But it wasn't always like this. Before the lawyers and addendums and cold rooms, there was Grandma Ruth, my father's mama, white as flour but warm as bread. She made peach cobbler so sweet it made you close your eyes and hum. Motown spinning on a Sunday afternoon, her thumb pressed to my chest when I was 12 and scared, telling me, "Blood is what you do, baby, not what folks say." Arthritis bent her fingers slow, turned her signature into pain, so she started using her thumbprint at church raffles, and on little notes she'd leave me. Her nail polished soft pink, her thumb a moon on paper. "Don't let nobody tell you where you belong," she whispered, the last time I saw her with her mind clear. I didn't know I'd need to hold that like rope in a storm. The first crack in their story came by accident. A beige envelope showed up, stamped crooked, from the Social Security Administration. "Address change confirmed," it said, "for benefits tied to my father's death and to me." My address wasn't changed. I held that paper like it was a snake, heart thudding. I called the number. A woman with a script for a voice said the checks had been redirected last year to an LLC. I wrote the name down twice, and when I asked whose name was on the authorization, she got quiet. "I can't disclose that," she read, and I could hear the fear under her training. I took that envelope to Sunday dinner. Linda stood over a pan of mac and cheese like she invented comfort. "Why was my address changed?" I asked, voice steady. "I didn't do that." She smiled the way folks do when they think you're the floor they're walking on. "Baby, your daddy's records have been a mess. We're just streamlining everything for you. You know how confused he got at the end." And then she looked over my head like I was a painting on a wall and said to the room, "Daddy, you're getting confused again." like she'd said to him when his hands started shaking and his heart started failing, like she was flicking a switch to make the world agree with her. People murmured and patted my shoulder. The lawyer she always kept near, a slick man with a thin tie and thinner eyes, said, "Marcus, let's not embarrass your mother with administrative details." "Step," I said before I could stop myself. "Stepmother." He smiled like he taught me something. "Of course." I left with my plate wrapped in foil and put it straight in Ms. Lula May's fridge because mine barely cooled. That night, I bought a cheap binder from Family Dollar and slid that envelope into the first sleeve. If only I'd known what she was really doing, I would have started months earlier, but that was the moment I knew I had to protect myself. They said I was confused, but I remembered everything. I started at the bank. Andre from my old warehouse shift knew a teller in Riverdale who owed him a favor. "She can't give you nothing she ain't supposed to," he told me, "but she can tell you where to ask." We sat at the counter of Gigi's diner, sipping coffee I couldn't afford, while he texted. 2 days later, I walked into a sterile lobby, hat in my hands, and asked for copies of canceled checks linked to my father's estate. "You'll need proof of interest," the manager said. I pulled the letter from Social Security. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. "They're claiming they support me $5,000 a month. I need to reconcile that." He left, came back with a folder. I wasn't allowed to take anything, but I could look. The checks were there, stacked like bad weather, thousands each month, routed straight into an LLC with Linda's initials, not a dollar with my name. My jaw went tight. I copied account numbers onto a napkin with a pen I bought for 99 cents. A lie needs constant maintenance, like a bad engine. And under the hood, I could see it leaking. The dates on those checks lined up perfect with the days she posted supporting my boy on Facebook. I took pictures of my studio, the dark circles under my eyes, the empty shelves, the medicine bottles half filled because I was making them stretch, lined them up next to screenshots of her posts about covering my rent. I recorded phone calls on my old Android, the one with the cracked screen. I saved texts where she wrote, "We send you $6,500 a month, don't play," and ones where she wrote, "Stop begging, be a man." I printed pages until the library printer coughed like it wanted me out. If this happened to you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. Be honest. I didn't want to fight. I wanted fairness. I wanted what Grandma intended, what my father said in the quiet, when Linda wasn't breathing down his neck, that I was his son, not his charity, and he didn't raise me to be anybody's embarrassment. Respect, earned shift by shift. We met in Linda's kitchen. Marble that could blind you, smell of lemon cleaner still in the air. The lawyer sat at the island, tie straight as a ruler. I laid out my binder, canceled checks, text printouts, a spreadsheet Andre helped me make showing dates, amounts, and the days I bought insulin and dollar bread. I kept my voice careful. I switched into the kind of English that made nurses hear me at the hospital. "For the record," I said, "these disbursements did not reach me. The estate checks went to King L Properties, LLC, registered at your P.O. box." Linda dabbed her lips with a napkin that had never seen grease. "Marcus, you're embarrassing yourself. We have been supporting you. Think about the, furniture we bought for your apartment." I looked at my duct-taped boots. "You remember what the bed cost?" I asked. She blinked. 200. I shook my head. $50, used from Goodwill. I had the receipt then. I have the receipt now. The lawyer cleared his throat. "You should be grateful for what you have," he said, like gratitude was a gag. "The estate has been generous." "Generous?" I felt heat in my face. "Y'all told the church you send me $5,000 to $8,000 a month. The only direct transfers I have from you are 50 here. Maybe 200 once, when they cut my hours. You mocked me for asking about my own father's will." The room was too bright. "I just want what's fair." She leaned over the papers, tapping one. "You're confused, Marcus. This is all very complex. No one is going to believe you over me," she said. Sweet, like she was talking to a child holding the wrong toy. Other family members, my white cousins, my stepsister with her Mercedes, stood in the doorway, arms folded. Someone muttered, "Not really one of us." Someone else said, "He's just after money." And just like that, the room tried to turn me into a problem. They thought I'd just disappear quietly. They thought I'd go back to the bus stop and keep my head down because that's what they'd built for me, a lie sturdy enough to live in. I walked out before my dignity could get smaller. On the porch, Ms. Lula May from next door waved me over. She's been the kind of neighbor who tells you when rain is coming before the clouds do. Her house smelled like lavender and wood polish. She poured sweet tea and set it down with hands that had made 1,000 biscuits. "Mr. Marcus," she said, soft, like my name was something you handle with care. "I've seen what they do to you. I don't say a lot, but I write things down." She pulled out a notebook with tiny, neat handwriting. It had dates and times she saw Linda take mail from my box. "It ain't right," she said. "You don't deserve this treatment. I'll testify if you need me." I sat there with my throat tight. Sometimes a little kindness feels heavier than a pile of money because it's been missing so long. I told her thank you. I told her I didn't want to bring trouble to her door. She shrugged. "You can't stop trouble by pretending it ain't knocking." Nurse Carla came next, like a door opening somewhere I didn't even know I'd been standing in front of. She worked at the rehab center where Grandma had spent a few months. We met by accident at the bus stop, my binder in my lap, rain threatening to show out. She saw the lawyer's name on a page. "Him?" she asked, wrinkling her nose. "He handled my mama's estate. We still missing 2 bonds and a watch." She looked at my pages like there were secrets in them. "I'll tell you what they pulled with us if you tell me what you got." We swapped stories under a bus shelter that smelled like urine and old gum. She told me about signatures that didn't look like her mama's, a notary who seemed to be everywhere at once. I told her about Grandma's arthritis, about the thumbprints. "Thumbprint?" she said, eyes bright. "We got logs. Rehab had to use her thumbprint for prescriptions and visitations when her hands were bad. Those logs have dates. If only I'd known what she was really doing, I would have asked for help sooner. Because within a week, I had a name for what had been gnawing at my life. Conversion, fraud, forgery. Asha Patel from Atlanta Legal Aid sat with me at a folding table in the Andrew and Walter Young Family YMCA, her laptop open, my binder like a second person between us. She wore a blue blazer and sneakers, hair pulled back, a look that said, "Tell me everything, and we'll make a list." "You got more proof than most folks who walk in here," she said. "You're ahead. We're going to do a demand for accounting. We're going to ask for ID checks anytime someone represents themselves as the estate. We're going to preserve those recordings and get statements from your witnesses." "Will anybody listen?" I asked, because that's what the world had trained me to doubt. She looked up. "They will. Or they'll have to." I left with a folder of forms and a backbone that felt like it just remembered it was a spine. For the first time in years, I felt hope. If you're listening to this and thinking none of this could happen to you, think again. Share this story if you think families should protect each other. The day I found the smoking gun was the day I sat in a private room at a bank Grandma liked because the tellers still said good morning like they meant it. I'd followed a trail Deacon Sam had given me, how Grandma asked him once about safe deposit boxes. She said she wanted to leave something proper, he told me. The banker put a key on the table, 2 little nuggets of authority. "You're listed here," she said, "on an addendum." My hands shook opening that narrow metal drawer. My fingerprint pressed down for access. Truth waited inside like it had been folding itself small. An addendum on thick paper with Grandma's full name, my full name, a notary stamp, and a thumbprint. Pink nail still there in the photo attached, dated 2 years before she died. A video camera, one of them old flip ones, battery corroded but fixable, tucked into the corner, and an inventory list written out in a tidy hand. Her wedding ring, 2 savings bonds, a certificate of deposit, a Bible with her maiden name, and a note. "Marcus is mine." That's what the note said, just 3 words, and the mine, cut like a blessing. I sat in the car afterward and shook so hard the steering wheel rattled. Then I cried. I had been strong for so long that the tears felt dangerous. I cried because she had loved me publicly and privately, not like a secret, and because I had been walking around like proof didn't exist. Then I wiped my face and took that little camera to Andre, who charged it and got the video off. Grandma on the screen, her voice like a song with rough edges, saying my name, spelling it, saying, "This is for him." I watched it 4 times. I watched it until my eyes hurt. That's when I knew there was no turning back. The next step was pride swallowed and fear tied back like hair. We were going public. The will reading had been set for Morning Star Baptist Fellowship Hall for transparency, a move Linda loved because she thought the room would bend toward her the way white rooms often do. I decided that room would see everything. I organized my evidence with Asha at a card table in the legal aid office until midnight. Canceled checks with arrows pointing to the LLC, text threads printed with big dates at the top, photos of my empty fridge and my taped boots, bank statements that showed transfers like a map of theft, the rehab thumbprint logs, the safe deposit addendum with grandma's thumbprint, and the notary whose seal would tie them in a knot they couldn't cut. We subpoenaed the notary, we wrote out questions, we got Ms. Lula May and Nurse Carla to sign statements. Deacon Sam agreed to speak first, if it went sideways. I practiced what to say in both voices, the one that worked with doctors and judges, and the one that grew up on porches, the one that said, "Don't play in my face." Late at night, I stood in front of a mirror and said, "Good afternoon, counsel," on the record, and then I said, "Say it to my face. Say it slow so we all hear." My knee hurt. My blood sugar dipped and spiked. I held the video like a body. The day had finally come. We gathered in that fellowship hall with the folding chairs that had held big men after funerals and little kids at Easter plays. The table up front had a white cloth and a pitcher of water. The lawyer straightened his tie. Linda wore that same Louis scarf, and God forgive me, but I noticed how her watch gleamed like a quiet scream of money. Cousins sat, stepsister whispering, folks ready for a show after service. Deacon Sam did the opening prayer, steady and soft. "Let right be right," he said, like a door opened somewhere you can't see. The lawyer started with the same story he always told. "The estate of the late Mr. King has been generous in its support of Marcus," he said, voice clean as bleach, "to the tune of 5,000 to 8,000 monthly, as we all know." He smiled at the room. As such, today's reading is a formality. I stood. The room inhaled. Linda smiled like people smile at a train that's far away. "Before we proceed," I said, "I need to ask for live ID checks for any party claiming authority over the estate." My voice didn't shake. All those nights practicing had turned my throat into an instrument. The lawyer blinked. "That's unnecessary." "It's necessary," I said, and Asha stepped forward with a county investigator who was already in the aisle, invited and quiet. "We're doing live ID checks today." Linda's face twitched. A deacon rolled out a little scanner, the kind they use to verify real IDs. The lawyer sighed like he was bored, scanned, and passed. Linda scanned, failed. "Try again," she said, light like a joke. Failed again. It was like the room leaned forward. Chairs stopped moving. And then I set the addendum with Grandma's thumbprint on the table. Polished wood met paper like a truth meeting a stage. I placed the video on a little monitor we had brought, hit play, and Grandma Ruth's voice filled the hall. She said my name like it was what she called for dinner. She said the date. She said, "This is for him," and pressed her thumb to the paper where a notary hovered and stamped. Her hands shook from arthritis, but her voice didn't. You could hear Motown faint in the background. You could see the pink polish on her thumb. I pushed a pen across the table and signed the safe deposit inventory receipt, the one listing the bonds and the CD already held for me, my signature firm like a promise. Then I looked right at Linda, then at the lawyer. "The court date is already booked," I said. "Discovery is in motion, video evidence is ready, and Ms. Patel here is doing this pro bono because God don't like ugly, and neither does Atlanta Legal Aid." It was quiet enough to hear the lights buzz. The lawyer tried to talk. He said something about clerical mix-ups and misunderstood intentions, about how this was all a miscommunication that didn't deserve to be blown out of proportion in front of the community. He said, "No one will believe you over me," but this time his voice didn't carry. He said, "Daddy, you're embarrassing yourself." But he said it to the wrong era. The era where my father wasn't here to be gaslit for me. Somebody in the third row said, "Enough." I think it was Deacon Sam, but it could have been any of them, because the room reached its limit all at once. Nurse Carla stood. "He tried the same on us," she said, pointing at the lawyer, her voice steady. "We're missing money too. I have my mama's signatures from when she couldn't hold a pen. They don't match." Ms. Lula May shuffled forward with her notebook. "I saw her take that boy's mail," she said, voice like a bell. "3 times, on a Wednesday, and then again the week before his birthday." People turned toward Linda like she had turned toward me all those years, except now there were eyes on my binder, on my feet, on my face, and the story they had bought wasn't fitting anymore. A couple of my white cousins changed color. Stepsister looked small in her big clothes. I heard somebody whisper, "We had no idea." Somebody else let out a little sob. The community apologized with their faces before their mouths caught up. The county investigator handed me a card in front of everyone. The lawyer gathered his papers with shaking hands. The pitcher on the table trembled when he touched the cloth. The truth has a way of finding light. After that day, everything happened fast and slow. Probate court ordered a full accounting, which is law for show me. All the money papers now. A forensic document examiner looked at the signatures on Grandma's forms versus the thumbprint logs from the rehab. She pointed at loops and angles with a pen like a detective in a movie. "These signatures cannot be from a person with this level of arthritis," she said. Simple. The notary whose seal had been all over everything stammered when she saw the video of Grandma actually using her thumbprint. "I must have been mistaken," she said. "You were," Asha said, and the judge raised an eyebrow until the air itself felt disciplined. They discovered transfers from the estate to Linda's personal checking account, even on days she posted about covering my tuition at a school I never attended. There were checks to King L Properties LLC for support paying rent, while my landlord's name never appeared. In 1 month, they claimed they sent me $8,000. In that same month, the only money I received straight from them was a Venmo for $50 with the note, "Get herself a pizza," sent at 2 a.m. after I texted that my blood sugar had dropped. "I may be young, but I'm not stupid," I said in court, and I saw the judge's mouth twitch like the truth had landed on his tongue and tasted good. Community members came forward, a deacon whose aunt had used the same lawyer, a woman from the beauty salon down on Campbellton Road who'd heard Linda brag about taking care of business while getting her hair set. Barbers at my shop put the pieces together out loud over the buzz of clippers. "Man, we've been hearing about that dude," my barber Ty said, blade steady against a head. "He's smooth like oil on concrete. You step on it, you slide." Barber shop talk travels fast. The truth always comes to light. "Marcus," folks said in the grocery store, "we had no idea." "How could they do this to you?" "We should have listened when your grandma tried to talk about thumbprints." I nodded, because forgiveness is a work like any other. You show up, you do the part that's yours. You clock out when it's time. The courts did what courts do, slow as molasses, and twice as sticky. Restitution got ordered. Money they'd siphoned had to be returned with penalties. The judge used words like conversion and malfeasance and breach of fiduciary duty, words that made me feel like I'd been living in a dictionary my whole life, but nobody handed me the index. The lawyer faced bar discipline and then charges. Linda got indicted. She cried loud in the hallway, mascara running, saying, "I just wanted to protect our family." I wanted to say, family is supposed to protect each other, not starve one to feed the other, but I didn't. I had said enough. There's dignity in letting the facts carry the last word. Winning didn't heal everything. It felt good, yes. The first night I slept in a new place, a small one-bedroom with clean walls near the west, and the AC whispering instead of coughing. I lay in the dark and listened. Silence has a way of telling on your heart. Mine said, "You're safe." Also, mine said, "She did those things to you because you were black, and because money makes people show their truest selves." That sort of truth sits heavy. It doesn't float off just because a judge signed some papers. It's a scar you learn to moisturize and respect. I got my knee into therapy 3 mornings a week and started full-time at the hospital, day shift this time. I could buy groceries without counting every coin like they were sins being tallied. I still checked prices because poverty leaves a math in your mind. I bought a pair of work boots that didn't need duct tape. I took the bus sometimes because habit builds muscles, but owning a monthly pass felt like owning a little piece of air. I kept Grandma's Bible on my nightstand, her maiden name in gold on the front, her Marcus's mind note tucked inside. Sometimes I'd put my thumb on her thumbprint in that addendum, and it felt like holding hands through time. But some people didn't come back. There's a fracture that never fully fuses. A couple cousins apologized and then flaked. Stepsister kept her Mercedes and her silence. Linda pleaded and cussed in turns, both like she wanted to carve new facts out of air. The lawyer stopped showing up in the places that made him feel big. I ran into him once in a grocery store and we both looked at the bread like it was TV. "I hope you're doing well," he said without moving his mouth much. "I am," I said, "on my own." He stared at the cheap loaves like they had answers. I picked up the kind I wanted and walked on. I didn't take a victory lap. That wasn't mine to take. The court restored what it could. The community did better after they knew better. The church started a fund for folks dealing with elder abuse and exploitation. I started volunteering with Atlanta Legal Aid on Saturdays, sitting at tables with folks who looked like me and folks who didn't. "If you see these signs," I tell them, sudden address changes on benefits, notarizations when the signer wasn't present, lawyers who refuse to be transparent, support that never shows up on paper. Say something. Ask for help. Keep your receipts. Family is supposed to show up. If they show out instead, call it what it is. Sometimes I go to the barbershop and the chairs rumble with laughter and stories, and I tell a young man sweeping hair about how truth is like water, how it finds the cracks, and he nods like he's stroking a rhythm. Sometimes I go to Morning Star on a Sunday and sit in the back, and when the choir swells, I hear Grandma's voice threaded through. Sometimes I walk past my old apartment and look up at the window where I used to count coins and pray for a bus to be late. Sometimes I see a white Mercedes and feel the old anger stretch and then lie back down, because it's tired now. Some hurts demand to be seen. Others beg to be fed. I chose to starve this one. I still use Ev when I'm with my people and standard English when the bank needs to act right, and I no longer apologize for code switching. It's survival, the kind of switch that keeps the lights on. When the young ones ask me, "How did you do it?" I tell them about Ms. Lula May and her little notebook. I tell them about Andre and the napkin with numbers. I tell them about Asha Patel, her sneakers and her backbone. I tell them about Deacon Sam, who lent his gravitas when mine felt too small. I tell them about Nurse Carla and how strangers become kin when the truth links you up. People still say, "We had no idea." They do better now. When an elder at church starts to get steamrolled by a helpful relative, someone steps in. When a white spouse uses the word real in front of family, heads snap up. When a lawyer tries to make something too complicated to question, a hand goes up. "Explain it slow," we say. "We'll wait." I'll never forget the sound of those chairs stopping that day in the fellowship hall, the way silence can become a verdict before the judge opens his mouth. I'll never forget the way my stepmother's smile cracked when her ID failed twice, how she looked up as if God would write her a new face. I'll never forget the weight of that safe deposit key in my palm, the steel of it cool and real, or the way my signature on that receipt felt like drawing a line around myself and saying, "Home." They said I was confused, but I remembered everything. They said I should be grateful, but I knew gratitude was not a substitute for justice. They said no one would believe me over them, but the truth always comes to light. Family is supposed to love you when you're counting pennies at the bus stop. Family is supposed to bring you groceries when your insulin is running low. Family is supposed to speak your name like a belonging, not a burden. When they don't, call it what it is. Then make a plan. Has family ever betrayed you like this? What would you have done? Comment below if you've seen this happen. And if you haven't, share this to spread awareness so someone who needs it will hear. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next story, because silence stays winning when we don't talk. I'm talking. I didn't go hungry for revenge. I got fed on justice. There's a difference. One leaves you sour, the other fills you enough to offer someone else a bite. I still live modest. My couch came from a thrift store on Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard. My plates don't match. But my lights are steady, my rent is paid, and my fridge has more than pickles and a plan. Dignified poverty feels different than wealthy deception. One is a place you stand while building. The other's a place you hide while stealing. I choose to stand. I go to work, mop still in my hands sometimes, clipboard when I got to check supplies, keys jangling like little reminders that I keep things clean. My supervisor calls me Mr. King now, not because of any money, but because respect grows where truth isn't choked. I talk to the young ones in the break room about budgeting and about reading papers before you sign, about not letting shame make you quiet. Shame is a thief's best friend. When I walk into the fellowship hall now, I don't stand in the back with my shoulders up around my ears. I sit where I want. I let folks hug me if they've earned it. I let the ones who turn their backs look at me and feel whatever they need to feel. I'm not their feelings babysitter. I'm busy living. I'm busy making my grandmother proud in ways that matter, showing up, telling the truth, helping others find their way out of the dark rooms lies keep you in. If you're going through this, listen. If they say they're supporting you with $3,000, $5,000, $8,000 a month, ask to see the proof. If you only ever get $50 here, $200 there, save those receipts. If your elder has arthritis and suddenly starts signing like a calligrapher, pause. If your mail goes missing, if there's a notary who shows up in every story like a ghost, if a lawyer uses big words like a curtain, open it. If a stepmother looks at you like skin turns blood into water, write that down in your mind and plan accordingly. If they say, no one will believe you over me, remember me. I'm Marcus. I'm 27. I stood up in a church with nothing but evidence, faith, and a voice that had learned how to stretch without breaking. I watched a room turn from me to the truth, like a compass swings north once the magnet is pulled away. I watched a lawyer fold. I watched a stepmother's smile fail. I watched a community correct itself, not all the way, but enough to start. I walked out into the parking lot that day, and the sky felt like it could hold me. I sat in my car and put my forehead on the steering wheel and said, thank you, to the woman who couldn't hear me anymore, and maybe to the God who could. The last time I visited Grandma's grave, I brought collard greens and cornbread from the repast kitchen and set them down like a picnic, because love is practical like that. I told her about the legal clinic. I told her about the young man who brought me a binder with his mama's thumbprints inside and how that thumbprint saved his inheritance. I told her that I'm okay, not rich, not hungry. Okay, she would have liked that. She would have said, baby, that's rich. Where are you watching from? Share this story. Someone needs to hear it, because sometimes revenge looks like a courtroom recognizing your name, and sometimes it looks like a bus pass that doesn't bounce, and sometimes it looks like a key that turns easy. Because family isn't about who claims you when there's a camera. It's about who shows up when you're counting pennies for bread, when you're choosing between heat and medicine, when your shoes are held together by tape and prayer. The ones who show up, those are your people. Hold them close. The rest, let the law handle. If you see these signs, public claims not backed by paperwork, mail, address changes you didn't make, notarized signatures that don't match, gifts given with strings attached, call Atlanta Legal Aid, call your church elder, call someone who knows. Don't sit in the dark waiting for someone to turn the light on for you. Your hand still works. You can flip the switch. Truth is like water. It will find the cracks. Give it room. I got my restitution. I got my day in court. I got my new keys. I didn't get my father back, or the years where I ate pickles, because I was too proud to ask somebody besides them for help. That's the melancholy part. Winning didn't erase the pain, but it put a border around it. It made it a thing I could look at from the outside and say, you happened. You don't own me. I'm not vindictive. I'm vindicated. And if you're on your way to the same fight, know this. You're not alone. We're out here. Those of us who learned to write things down and tell the truth out loud. We've been waiting for you. Share this story. Someone needs to hear it. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're counting pennies for bread. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want more stories of truth over lies. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.